Hello and welcome to our webcast for December 1st, 2017. My name is Christian Lebré and this is Amy Asbrook, Director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet.
Hello.
Okay. Also joining us is Taylor Ayat, our Policy Analyst and Outreach Coordinator. Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet is a non-religious organization by and for people with disabilities and our allies. Our goal is to inform, unify, and give voice to the disability rights opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending of life practices that discriminates against people with disabilities. Today's topics: review of Canadian disability rights legislation. This part is Newfoundland and Labrador. Second subject is mixed result on assisted suicide bill in Australia. So, Amy Asbrook will tell us about it.
Okay then. Okay, review of Canadian disability rights legislation, Newfoundland and Labrador. We've reached part 7 of our series on disability legislation across Canada. Of disability rights in Newfoundland and Labrador, we've gone through more than half of Canada. Newfoundland does not have a law establishing rights for people with disabilities. It does have the usual thing where people with disabilities are included in the among other protected groups that have equal rights. But as we pointed out, that kind of law isn't enough because it doesn't guarantee they'll be removed.
Our study up to date said and proved that rights are a lot better than services.
Right. It's in terms of being equal in society, people with disabilities need equal access to services that exist already, and sometimes additional services are important, yes, but it's when we're talking about rights are the key here. And when we're talking about dealing with the issue of euthanasia and assisted suicide, people with disabilities need to have equal rights to participate in society. So the latest progress on this front came a few weeks ago when the province announced some changes to its rules governing the construction of parking lots and new or renovated buildings. These include requirements for accessible washrooms.
Yes, that's the kind of minimum.
Right, decreasing the slope of ramps.
It tells people who their wheelchair
pushing manual wheelchairs, yeah. And I don't know. I think they reduced it from 1 in 12 to 1 in 16. Is that what you remember, Taylor?
That sounds about right.
Yeah. And I don't know. I know the Americans with Disabilities Act accessibility guidelines has it at 1 in 12. I don't know if it's necessary to make it that low, but sometimes instead of doing going all out on, exaggerating the minimum slope of ramp on one situation, they should probably do more on other situations to improve access.
Right.
So they're also going to mark parking spaces with signs instead of blue paint on the ground.
It's an improvement.
Which creates a slippery surface and is invisible under the snow.
Yeah. Live in the country with snow.
Right. And
a little bit.
And also if somebody is parked there, of course, you don't know what's the accessible space. So having a sign is. They also want increased signs for illegally parking in an accessible spot. The fines will now range from $400 to $700 instead of $100 to $400. Enforced or not is another question. Requiring 10% of apartments in multi-unit buildings to be accessible instead of only 7%.
It's an improvement.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit low.
considering the percentage of people with disabilities, since people with mobility impairments represent a fairly large percentage of the population.
Yeah. Plus or minus 70% is high.
Well, I think in terms of mobility impairments, it's probably about 12%, but even so, it should be over 10% that are accessible. So they're gonna
And what about
require-
aging seniors too?
What's that?
The percentage of people with mobility issues is going to go up as people age. There's a
Yes.
huge wave of aging seniors coming.
Absolutely.
We agree.
Also, they're going to require new and renovated buildings to have automatic door openers, counters to be lowered and barrier-free, requiring floors to be completely level. Currently, raised platforms are allowed in security and observation areas. And the term persons with disabilities will be used in legislation, replacing more outdated language such as physically disabled persons. And again, this is sort of, getting the language right is a nice thing, but providing actual anti-discrimination protections is more important.
Yeah. Obvious.
These changes will make provincial standards consistent with the Provincial Building Accessibility Act and the National Building Code of Canada. Lisa Dempster, Minister of Children, Seniors and Social Development, told the St. John's Telegram newspaper this summer, consult with people with disabilities, organizations, and municipal governments in the coming year about making further changes. Cecilia Carroll, who chaired the Building Accessibility Advisory Board, was extremely disappointed in the idea of more consultations instead of concrete action. She said the last review of the Building Accessibility Act took 4 years, ending in 2004. Most recommendations went nowhere.
Basically, for government is talk, that's no action.
Yeah. If they talk about it, they think they're covering their ass.
They should put their act where their mouth out.
Yeah, their money where their mouth is. Yeah, and I think, the business community complains, oh, we can't do that, we can't do that, we can't do that. Whereas most of the requirements for making modifications only trigger when there's renovations happening or new construction, so whatever. Newfoundland also has a disability services office whose primary goals are to help government departments avoid excluding people with disabilities, promote inclusion, disability issues. It produced a provincial strategy like British Columbia did, but there has been no follow-up. Again, they talk a good game, but where is the beef?
Yeah. Where is the beef?
Here's the beef. Initiatives include trying to start an accessible taxi program, which is interesting because I don't know if their public transit program is accessible. I took a brief look at the laws for the province, and there's nothing about public transit access. Grants to modify vehicles and a Words with Dignity campaign. Newfoundlanders are now encouraged to say wheelchair user instead of wheelchair bound, or that someone has a disability rather than suffers from a disability. But it promotes person-first language to the point where the term disabled is seen as negative. And again, it's like the language police. It's not that important as ensuring equal rights. And let's get our priorities straight, please. Also, all that, politically correct stuff, it's an excuse for people to get pissy about disability rights. Yes. The province also has a number of government programs to assist people with disabilities in finding work. Employability assistance. Access the skills and supports necessary to work. Services include employment counseling, assessment and planning, pre-employment training, post-secondary education, skills training, and providing adaptive equipment. People need to be prepared for employment, but We also need to prepare the employment sector to stop discriminating. And none of these
Precisely.
programs are designed to do that. Okay. The employment support program helps workers or job seekers obtain workplace accommodations as well as software and assistive devices like hearing aids, scanners, or screen readers. Again, rather than changing the environment. Where have we heard this before? Other initiatives provide summer jobs, after-school work internships in the field of assistive technology, work terms in the public service. The Office of Employment Equity for Persons with Disabilities may also provide wage subsidies for crown corporations and other governments to hire disabled people. And we've talked a little about that before, that wage subsidies kind of sends a negative message. People aren't worth hiring and they have to be subsidized to be worth having as employees. So I think that's a double-edged sword. Yes, people get jobs, but often they're not permanent jobs because the subsidy is a time-limited thing, and as soon as the subsidy runs out,
the job goes.
yeah, the job goes.
Yeah, it's happened.
Okay. Multiple programs to provide housing for people with intellectual disabilities. The Alternative Family Care Home Program allows, quote, 2 unrelated adults with intellectual disabilities to live in a family atmosphere in order to receive room and board, supervision, and personal and social support. So it's like adult
Again, it's
foster
look
care.
nice, but it's a little bit too much patronizing.
Patronizing, yeah. And so those programs have a lot of rules like curfews and stuff, and they don't treat people like adults. So
If it's not too patronizing, it's fair.
Right.
It's good.
Could be good. The cooperative apartment program allows up to 3 adults with intellectual disabilities to share a rented unit with live-in support staff.
Same thing.
That's, again, that could be good for policies.
Yes.
The program's emphasis on skills development and support to enable more independent living. And finally, the shared living arrangements program allows people to share a space and related costs permanently. And independent living arrangements are also available for those who are unable to reside with their family or presumably housemates.
So far, so good.
There are some options, and those are all directed at people with intellectual disabilities. What is available for people with other disabilities?
Yeah, but for now on, so far, so good.
Right. There is a home modification program for people who own their homes, funding to low to moderate income seniors and persons with disabilities who own their own homes and require accessibility modifications. An applicant must have an annual income of $46,500 or less.
Okay, but nothing for tenants.
Right. That's, if you're a renter, you don't get access modifications. You've got to pay for it yourself. And, you know, most people with disabilities, a lot of people with disabilities don't have the wherewithal to own a home. Newfoundland also offers some in-home support services. The Direct Home Services Program offers early intervention to infants, toddlers, and preschoolers who have or who are at risk for significant developmental delay. And this is one of those situations where we're not sure whether they mean developmental delay as in intellectual disability or whether they're actually talking about developmental disability, which is any disability that has onset before the age of 18 that affects one's development.
So not clear.
Right, not clear.
At least not clear enough.
Right, a developmental disability doesn't necessarily affect abilities, but oftentimes people use those terms interchangeably. Wrongly. Okay, the Community Behavioral Services allows school-age children with a developmental disability and significant behavioral concerns to receive the support needed issues at home and elsewhere. And that's often referring to kids who are autistic, and it's often referring to behaviors that may not necessarily be disruptive, but parents have an idea that they want their kids to seem as normal as possible, which in a sense, you know, because other kids tease anybody who seems different, there is some justification for that. But if the kid needs to, you know, spin little pins around in order to focus on what's going on in the classroom, it's not necessarily helpful to that kid to be forced to stop those behaviors. And I had to go through that when I was a kid, because I had various stimming behaviors because I was blind, and my family, you know, teased me and harassed me until I stopped doing those things. Okay. For adults, the Provincial Home Support Program allows an agency or a private worker hired by the family to provide personal and behavioral supports, household management, and respite. Home support services are intended to supplement, not replace, service provided by the individual, family, and/or support.
Okay, all of the good things that we saw just before that you read this, ripped off right now just by this sentence. Right. It's not existing anymore.
Well, this is a service. This is personal assistance service to people, adults with physical disabilities. Yeah. But basically, what they're saying is, forget the idea of living independently. Forget the idea of, you know, living like an ordinary person and not having to depend on your family for physical assistance. You don't get to do that if you're disabled. That's kind of sucks.
Yes, it sucks.
Yes. And that's a situation where it amounts to, you know, creating a right. So people are stuck either depending on their families or being in institutions. And we know what that does to people's desire to die, which increases it. Okay. The Social Assistance Program provides basic medical supplies.
That's special assistance.
Oh, I'm sorry. Special assistance. You're right. I'm sorry. Provides medical supplies and adaptive equipment, such as dressings, catheters, oxygen equipment, braces, burn garments, wheelchairs, commodes, or walkers. So basically, supplies and durable medical equipment. And finally, like Alberta, Newfoundland has a provincial advisory council for the inclusion of people with disabilities. It's been active since 2003. Reports are available online. The most recent information from 2016, so they haven't updated their page, shows that the council provided advice on provincial legislation, reminding officials that it should be rights-based and broad in scope, covering supported decision-making, legal capacity, inclusive education, transportation and built environments, employment, procurement requirements, access to American Sign Language, and support for deaf culture. So, you know, sounds like good topics that they provided advice on. It's probably important to go look at what they actually said to see if what they said agrees with the disability rights agenda. And again, we don't know what the results of those consultations were. We also don't know if their advice was more geared to family and service providers or whether it was geared to people with disabilities. So, did you want to add anything, Taylor?
I think you keep stealing all my comments.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, I did want to mention a couple things about the home programs, though.
Hey, sorry.
Let's be neat.
Okay, sorry.
What were you saying, Taylor?
Stealing
your comments?
Yes, you do.
Where were we? A subcomponent of the Direct Home Services Program offers ABA for autistic youth.
Right.
Not cool.
Yeah. Some
Um,
autistic adults have said ABA feels like torture. And it's only since the great waves of autistics have grown up that we've been able to hear from the people who are subject to these events what they really do to people. So it's kind of interesting. All the professionals and all the parents, oh, ABA, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But when you talk to autistics, it's like torture.
Right. And the community behavioral services program is actually for people school age and older. Adults can use it too.
Okay. Okay, on to our next topic. Mixed results on assisted suicide bills in Australia. 2 Australian states have different reactions to proposed assisted. New South Wales, the state with the largest population, defeated its bill with a 20-19 vote.
Oh, it was very close.
Very close, yes. The bill would have allowed anyone over the age of 25, which is kind of interesting that it's such a high age, expecting to cause death within 12 months to access assisted suicide. The person would need to be assessed by a psychologist or psychiatrist and have their decision approved by 2 medical practitioners. One of these 2 professionals must be a specialist. And itself, and when it says medical practitioners, it's either a doctor or a nurse practitioner. So whenever they say medical practitioners, I always they mean Victoria.
I wonder whether the age 25 limit is to keep teenagers away.
Yeah, you kind of wonder. That would be an interesting idea that they were trying to do that. And in Canada, they're trying to think about allowing teenagers to have assisted suicide. Victoria, the state with the 2nd largest population, approved a bill allowing assisted suicide for residents of the state who are over 18, have a life expectancy of less than 6 months, and have an illness that is incurable and causes intolerable suffering.
So boundaries, but we know that those boundaries doesn't work.
Right, those are the typical safeguards that we know don't work.
Who drive at 100 kilometers an hour on the highway?
Right, who actually drives 100 kph?
Or less.
Right.
And the average is a little bit more.
Comes into effect in June of 2019. I had to check that. I had to verify because I saw different reports on that as well. And it is June of 2019. That it was June 19th. So I just verified that. See, we check ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
Diane Coleman, president of Not Dead Yet in the U.S., wrote a letter to the Victoria Legislative Council. She explained that incorrect prognoses and misdiagnoses from medical professionals are common and could cause someone's life to be cut short unnecessarily. In addition, Ms. Coleman stressed that users of respiratory support, like she uses, it's commonly portrayed invasive, people can live full and active lives. And
yes, Diane Coleman is herself a full-time user of breathing apparatus.
Yeah, and obviously she's still engaged actively and
very active.
Neuromuscular disability, 64 years old, she's still not dead yet. The leader of the Federal Green Party, Richard D. Natale, said that he will put forward a bill next year based on the Victorian legislation. His bill would allow each of Australia's 6 states and 2 territories own legislation. Before that, DiNatale is planning a second bill which will overturn a law preventing the Australian Capital Territory and Northern Territory from introducing assisted suicide legislation in place since 1997. And that resulted from actually the legalization of assisted suicide in the mid-90s, and then they overturned the legalization. So that was an interesting period.
Right.
So, did you want to add anything, Taylor?
Not to this. I think we covered it all.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, if you have any questions or comments or want more information about the topics that we discussed here, you could view our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours not dead yet. Website at tvndy.ca, and there you can also there at our website you can find our Facebook postings, and we're also in the process of translating some of the most important articles on this topic into French, so we're going to be putting those up online pretty soon. Email at info@tvndy.ca, or you can follow us on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks to Christian for helping out, and
Thank you,
to Taylor as well. And we will see you next time. Take care.
Bye.
See you next week.
See you.